The Whitmore residence overlooked a quiet stretch of New York's Hudson Valley, its glass walls and minimalist architecture celebrated in design magazines as a triumph of modern elegance. Yet to Sofia Alvarez, standing at the side entrance with her resume folded carefully in her coat pocket, it felt like a place where sound itself had been swallowed, a home too pristine to allow grief to echo openly. Sofia was 27, the daughter of immigrants, and had spent the last 4 years working as a private caregiver and domestic helper, moving from family to family as contracts ended, children grew older, or employers quietly decided they wanted someone who spoke without an accent or blended more seamlessly into their curated lives. She had learned not to take rejection personally, but this interview carried weight. The pay was generous, the job listing unusually detailed, and the note attached to her email application had simply said, "This position requires patience, discretion, and empathy. It is not for everyone." The door opened to reveal a woman in her early 60s, with silver hair pulled tightly into a bun, dressed in a tailored uniform that suggested long service and strict order, who introduced herself as Ms. Hargreave, the household manager, and remarked with faint approval that Sofia had arrived early before leading her through a hallway that felt more like a gallery than a home, the walls lined with abstract art, the floors gleaming and untouched, the air smelling faintly of lemon polish and something colder, something unresolved. They stopped outside a private study, and after a sharp knock, a man's voice called them in, clipped and impatient, and Sofia found herself facing Daniel Whitmore, founder and CEO of a powerful biotech firm, recently widowed, widely admired, and, according to articles she had read the night before, fiercely private. He barely looked up from his desk at first, finishing an email while gesturing for her to sit, his presence commanding without warmth, his grief hidden beneath control and productivity. And when he finally turned his attention to her, his eyes assessed her not unkindly but clinically, as if she were another variable to be evaluated and either accepted or discarded. He noted her work history, questioned the length of her past positions, and listened without comment as she calmly explained each ending, emphasizing her commitment to children and families navigating difficulty. And then he leaned back and explained the nature of the job in a tone that suggested this conversation had been repeated many times before. His son, Noah, was 6 years old, had been diagnosed as profoundly deaf at birth, and required constant supervision, structured routines, and caregivers who understood that emotional attachment was discouraged. "I need competence," Daniel said flatly, "not sentiment." Sofia listened carefully and then asked, gently but without hesitation, if she could meet Noah before accepting any offer, and something flickered behind Daniel's composed expression, surprise perhaps, or irritation. But after a pause he agreed, delegating the task to Ms. Hargreave, while already reaching for his phone again. Noah's room was at the far end of the house, large and bright, filled with toys arranged with almost obsessive neatness, and in the center of it sat a small boy at a table, drawing silently, his dark lashes lowered, his posture rigid, and when Sofia entered, he did not look up, did not react at all, though she sensed not emptiness but restraint, a learned stillness rather than disinterest. She approached slowly, making sure her movements were visible, and crouched nearby, introducing herself in a soft voice, unsure whether he could hear her, but trusting that tone mattered even when sound did not. And when he did not respond, she spoke honestly, telling him she was nervous, that she did not know sign language well yet, that she might make mistakes, and that she hoped he would help her learn how to care for him better. And to her surprise, Noah's pencil paused mid-stroke, his shoulders relaxing just a fraction, and when he finally looked up, his eyes met hers with startling clarity, not vacant or lost, but observant, intelligent, and guarded. He signed something she didn't fully understand, then reached for a notebook and wrote in careful letters, "You talk too much. Everyone does." Sofia smiled and nodded, acknowledging the truth of it, and replied that she could be quiet if he preferred, to which he wrote back, "You'll leave anyway." The words simple and devastating, and Sofia answered without hesitation that if she ever did leave, she would say goodbye properly, that she believed children deserved that respect, and something softened in Noah's face, not trust yet, but curiosity. Sofia accepted the job that afternoon, and over the following weeks, She immersed herself in Noah's routine, learning basic sign language at night, creating tactile games, reading aloud while signing the words, and gradually watching him unfold from a withdrawn, hyper-controlled child into one who laughed silently, who tested boundaries, who asked questions with his hands and his eyes. And yet, as her confidence grew, so did her unease, because there were moments that didn't fit the narrative. Everyone accepted so easily. Noah reacted to sounds he shouldn't have been able to perceive, flinching when a door slammed or turning toward her voice when she spoke unexpectedly. And when she once dropped a metal spoon behind him, he startled instantly, covering his ears before remembering himself and freezing, panic flooding his face. When she asked him gently about it, he shook his head fiercely and signed that it was nothing, that he imagined it. But Sophia's instincts told her otherwise, and the truth came out one evening, during a thunderstorm, when Noah clung to her, trembling, hands pressed over his ears, sobbing soundlessly as the thunder cracked overhead. And when she signed that storms could be loud and scary, he broke, collapsing against her and confessing in halting signs and tear-streaked, writing that he could hear, that he had always been able to hear, that the doctors had been wrong, or maybe right once, but not anymore, and that his mother had died trying to fix him, and if he wasn't deaf, then her death meant nothing. So he learned to be what everyone expected, learned to stay silent, learned to pretend, because his father's grief was too heavy and his love too fragile to risk the truth. Sophia held him, her own heart breaking as she pieced together the story of a child who had carried unbearable responsibility in silence. And she promised him that his mother's death was not his fault, that accidents did not need purpose to be tragic, that love did not require suffering to be real, and that he deserved to live honestly, not as a symbol of loss, but as a child who could hear laughter and music and his own voice if he chose to use it. That night, after Noah finally slept, Sophia went to Daniel's office and refused to be dismissed, telling him calmly but firmly what she had learned, watching as denial gave way to confusion, then horror, then a grief so raw it stripped away the polished executive entirely. And when Daniel finally went to Noah's room and heard his son speak for the first time, a small, trembling dad, the silence that followed was not empty but full, heavy with years lost and years still possible. And in that moment Sophia understood that healing did not come from perfection or control, but from the courage to listen to truths that hurt. And as the Whitmore house slowly transformed from a mausoleum of grief into a place where sound, laughter, and honesty were allowed to live again, Sophia knew she had not just found a job, but become part of a story where love finally learned how to speak.